What if the reason your mind never feels quiet isn't because you think too much, but because your thoughts never have a place to go? What if that heavy, suffocating pressure in your chest isn't a sign that you are failing, but a sign that your internal reservoir is simply full? We live in a world that constantly adds to our mental load, but rarely do we learn how to set that load down. Today, we are going to explore a practice that is as ancient as the scriptures and as modern as the latest brain imaging technology. We are talking about the profound, transformative power of writing your thoughts down. I want to tell you clearly, there is a way to stop the noise. There is a real, biological, and spiritual reason why your mind feels like a storm, and there is a simple path toward the calm you've been searching for. Most people never learn this part. They believe that thinking about a problem is the same as processing it. They stay trapped in a loop of mental rehearsal, wondering why they feel more exhausted after a night of thinking than they did after a day of working. In a few minutes, you'll understand exactly why your brain reacts the way it does to the written word, and how a few minutes with a pen can do what hours of worrying never could. This is where peace begins. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a crowded room. In this room, every worry, every to-do list item, every hurtful comment someone made to you years ago, and every fear about tomorrow is shouting at the same time. This is the experience of the noisy mind. It's like a radio stuck between stations, producing a constant, static hum that drains your energy and prevents you from hearing your own intuition or the voice of peace. When we keep our thoughts trapped inside our heads, they don't just sit there quietly. They spin. They iterate. They grow. Have you ever noticed how a small worry at 10 a.m. becomes a catastrophe by midnight? Without an exit point, your thoughts behave like a pressurized steam engine with no release valve. The pressure builds until it manifests as anxiety, irritability, or a profound sense of emotional numbness. We often try to find silence by distracting ourselves. We scroll through phones, we turn on the television, or we dive into work. But distraction is not the same as release. True silence is hard to find because we are carrying our internal weather with us everywhere we go. We think we are experiencing the world, but we are actually just experiencing our thoughts about the world. We suppress our emotions, hoping they will disappear, but suppressed emotions are like debt. They eventually come due, and usually with interest. This struggle is not new. Thousands of years ago, the writers of the Bible understood this internal pressure with a level of psychological sophistication that we are only now beginning to prove in laboratories. If you look at the Psalms, you aren't just looking at ancient poetry or religious liturgy. You are looking at the raw, written, emotional release of human beings in deep, agonizing distress. Consider King David, a man described as being after God's own heart. He was a king, a warrior, and a leader, yet he was often plagued by what we would today recognize as severe anxiety and clinical depression. David didn't just sit in a room and think his prayers. He didn't allow his worries to stay trapped in the echoing chambers of his mind. He poured them out. He took a stylus to parchment and externalized his internal world. There is a specific, recurring phrase used in the scriptures that serves as a divine instruction for mental health. Pour out your heart like water. We find this in Lamentations and throughout the Psalms. This isn't just a beautiful metaphor for prayer. It is a clinical description of an essential human need for regulation. When you pour water out of a vessel, the vessel becomes light. It becomes empty. It becomes ready to be filled with something new. But if the water stays in the vessel and the vessel is sealed, the water becomes stagnant. Pressure builds. In the same way, when your thoughts are sealed inside you, they become toxic. They ferment into bitterness, worry, and physical tension. The Bible suggests that writing and externalizing our internal state is a form of spiritual alignment. By putting words to our pain, our fears, and our hopes, we are no longer consumed by them. We are standing outside of them, looking at them with God. This practice of pouring out allows us to move from a state of being overwhelmed to a state of being observed. But why does this work so effectively on a physical level? Why does the body relax when the hand begins to move across a page? Why does the heart rate slow down and the breath deepen simply because ink is meeting paper? In neuroscience, this is called neuroplasticity. This is the brain's incredible ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. Our brains are not hardwired. They are constantly being reshaped by our actions and our focus. When you are stuck in a loop of overthinking, your amygdala, the almond-shaped part of your brain responsible for the fight or flight response, is firing at full capacity. The amygdala is your internal alarm system. Its job is to keep you alive, not to keep you happy. It perceives your internal worries, your fear of a deadline, your sadness over a broken relationship, your guilt over a mistake, as immediate, physical, external threats. To your brain, a worry about your finances or a memory of a social mistake feels exactly the same as a physical predator lurking in the room. This is why you feel the thump in your chest and the knot in your stomach. Your brain thinks you are in a life or death struggle, and because the predator is inside your own mind, you can't run away from it. When you write your thoughts down, you are engaging in a process called affective labeling. This is where the magic and the science happens. By choosing a specific word for an emotion, by saying, "I am feeling neglected," or "I am terrified of failing," you shift the electrical activity in your brain. You move the energy away from the emotional, reactive amygdala and toward the rational, logical prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the CEO of your brain. It is the part of you that plans, reasons, and regulates emotions. When you label a feeling, you are literally telling your nervous system, "I see the problem. I have named it. I have defined its borders. You can stand down now." This is how you tame the emotional brain. You are using the language centers of the brain to put a leash on the survival centers. This transition is vital because it reduces the threat signals being sent through your body. There is a physiological bridge between the hand and the mind. When you write by hand, you are engaging in a complex motor task that requires a significant amount of brain real estate. As you slow down your thinking to match the speed of your hand, you create order out of chaos. Think about the nature of a thought. A thought is lightning fast, non-linear, and often fragmented. You can think a dozen conflicting things in a single second, but you cannot write 5 sentences at once. Writing is inherently linear. It forces you to take the tangled ball of yarn that is your anxiety and pull it into a single, straight thread. This forced slowing down gives the mind a sense of safety. It signals to your brain that the emergency is being handled because you are now operating in ordered time rather than panic time. Here is what most people miss. Writing isn't about producing a masterpiece. It isn't about grammar, punctuation, or being right. It is about externalization. When a thought is in your head, it feels like it is you. You become the anxiety. You become the failure. But when a thought is on the paper, it is just a sentence. It is an object outside of yourself. Once it is on the paper, the relationship changes. You are no longer the prisoner. You are the judge. You can look at that sentence. You can challenge it. You can look at a thought like, "I will never be happy again," and realize, when you see it in physical ink, that it isn't actually true. It's just a feeling you had at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. This distance, this sacred space between the observer and the thought, is where healing lives. And this is why it works so consistently across cultures and centuries. It bridges the gap between our spiritual need for confession and our biological need for regulation. In the spiritual sense, we are bringing things from the darkness into the light. In the biological sense, we are moving from the sympathetic nervous system, stress, to the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. So, how do we apply this? How do we take this from a concept to a calming reality? How do we begin the process of unloading the mind? Most people fail at this because they try to journal rather than release. They think they have to write a diary entry about their day. But if you want to calm your mind, you don't need a diary, you need a brain dump. Start by finding a quiet space. It doesn't have to be long. 10 minutes is often enough to change your brain chemistry. Take a pen and paper. The physical act of writing is superior to typing because it involves more sensory feedback and forces a slower pace, which is exactly what an overactive amygdala needs. Begin by asking yourself, what is the loudest voice in my head right now? Don't judge the answer. If the loudest voice is saying something petty or irrational, write it down anyway. In the Psalms, David often started by complaining. He would say, "How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever?" He didn't start with praise. He started with the truth. This is the lament phase. It is the honesty that God and your brain requires before peace can enter. As you write, you might find that the thoughts come out in a jumble. That's okay. Let the ink flow as fast or as slow as it needs to. You are not writing for an audience. You are clearing a workspace. This is where peace begins, not when the problems are solved, but when the problems are no longer taking up all the room in your head. Here's what most people miss: the power of the Selah. In the Psalms, we often see this word, Selah. Scholars believe it means to pause and calmly think about that. When you finish writing a heavy thought, take your own Selah. Look at the words. Breathe. Notice how your body feels now that the thought is out there instead of in here. And this is why it works. You are practicing the presence of yourself and the presence of God simultaneously. You are acknowledging that you are a complex being with a mind that needs tending, just like a garden. If you never weed the garden, the weeds will eventually choke the life out of the flowers. Writing is the act of weeding. This is the intersection of the divine and the biological. It is where the peace that passes understanding meets the prefrontal cortex. It is a gift that has been available to us since the first word was ever etched into stone. Here is what most people miss. The brain has a default mode network. This is what your brain does when it isn't focused on a specific task. It wanders, it ruminates, and it usually focuses on the negative. Writing switches you out of the default mode and into the task-positive mode. It gives your brain a job to do, and that job is to organize your internal world. This is where peace begins. Not in the absence of trouble, but in the presence of order. Would you like me to continue by detailing specific prompts for different types of mental static, such as grief, decision fatigue, or deep-seated resentment? The most effective time to write is often when the noise is the loudest, usually first thing in the morning or right before bed. In the morning, you are clearing the mental clutter before the day begins. You are essentially sweeping the floor of your mind so that you don't trip over yesterday's worries as you try to walk into today's opportunities. At night, you are performing a brain dump, giving your mind permission to stop holding on to your worries so you can actually rest. Your brain is a magnificent processor, but it is a poor storage unit for unresolved stress. When you tell your brain, "It's okay, I've put it on the paper," you are effectively turning off the alarm system that would otherwise keep you awake at 3 a.m. This phenomenon is tied to what psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect. This is a psychological principle that states our brains tend to remember unfinished or interrupted tasks much better than completed ones. When you have a worry, a fear, or a plan that is only existing in the cloud of your mind, your brain marks it as unfinished business. It will keep looping that thought, pinging your consciousness over and over again to ensure you don't forget it. This creates a state of constant cognitive fever. Writing acts as a completion mechanism. By moving the thought from the abstract realm of the mind to the physical realm of the page, you are signaling to your brain that the task of remembering this stress is done. The file has been saved to a hard drive. It no longer needs to run in the background of your mental RAM. Don't worry about how long you write. 5 minutes of absolute honesty is better than an hour of correct writing. We live in a world that demands a curated version of ourselves, a version that is always fine, always blessed, and always in control. But your journal is the one place where you do not have to be a performer. Don't try to be positive if you don't feel positive. If you are angry, let the paper hold your anger. If you are grieving, let the ink be your tears. The paper is the only listener in the world that never gets tired, never judges, and never interrupts. It doesn't offer unsolicited advice, and it doesn't feel uncomfortable with your darkness. In the scriptures, we see this radical honesty in the concept of lament. A large portion of the Bible is dedicated to people simply telling the truth about how much they are hurting. They didn't skip straight to the happy ending. They sat in the dust. They wrote down their why questions. They challenged the heavens with their pain. This is a vital spiritual discipline because God cannot heal the version of you that you are pretending to be. He heals the real you. And often, we don't even know who the real us is until we see our thoughts staring back at us from a piece of paper. From a neuroscience perspective, this process engages the reticular activating system, or the RAS. This is a bundle of nerves at our brainstem that acts as a filter for all the information around us. It decides what is important and what can be ignored. When you write down your thoughts, you are training your RAS. If you write only about your fears, your brain becomes a heat-seeking missile for more things to fear. But if you use writing to sift through your thoughts, labeling the fears but also noting the moments of grace, you are literally reprogramming your brain's filtering system. You are teaching your mind to look for clarity amidst the chaos. Emphasize honesty over perfection. If your writing is messy, let it be messy. If your handwriting is illegible because your hand is shaking with frustration, let that be a testament to your release. Your mind is messy, and you are simply moving that mess from your soul onto a physical space where it can no longer hurt you. Think of it as emotional dialysis. You are filtering the toxins out of your internal system so that your spirit can breathe. As you develop this habit, you will notice a shift. This isn't just a tactic, it's a transformation. You will begin to feel a sense of alignment. Writing becomes a form of calm, a form of release, and ultimately, a form of worship. You are acknowledging the reality of your experience while refusing to be a prisoner to it. This is where we see the power of naming. In the book of Genesis, one of the first tasks given to humanity was to name the creatures of the earth. In Hebrew thought, to name something is to have a level of authority over it. When you leave your thoughts unnamed, they have authority over you. They are vague, haunting shadows. But when you write them down, when you name them anxiety, resentment, fear of failure, you are reclaiming your God-given authority to steward your own heart. You are taking the static of your life and tuning the dial until the signal becomes clear. There is a profound biological difference between typing on a screen and writing by hand. When you type, you use the same repetitive motion for every letter. But when you write by hand, each letter requires a different, complex stroke. This engages a much larger portion of the brain's motor cortex. This bilateral integration, using both sides of the brain to process an emotion while physically moving the hand, is one of the most effective ways to process trauma. It's as if the physical act of crossing the midline of the paper helps the brain bridge the gap between the emotional right hemisphere and the logical left hemisphere. This is why a handwritten note to yourself feels more real and more grounding than a digital note. It involves the body in the healing process. Peace is not the absence of thoughts, it is the presence of clarity. We often pray for God to take the thoughts away, but perhaps the invitation is to bring the thoughts to light so they can be transformed. By writing your journey, you are documenting the faithfulness of your own resilience and the quiet ways in which you are being guided through the storm. You are building a memorial stone. In ancient times, people would stack stones after a great trial to remember that they survived. Your journals are your memorial stones. On the days when you feel like you can't go on, you can look back at the pages from a year ago and see that you felt the same way then, and yet, you are still here. You survived that and you will survive this. This practice also creates a third-person perspective. When a thought is inside you, it is subjective. It feels like an absolute truth. I am a failure feels like a fact when it's rattling around in your skull. But when you write it on a piece of paper and look at it from 6 inches away, it becomes an object. You can look at it and say, is that actually true? Or is that just a feeling I'm having because I'm tired? This self-distancing is a key component of emotional intelligence. It allows you to become the observer of your life rather than just the victim of your impulses. I want to invite you to try this tonight. I want you to go beyond just thinking about this video and actually engage the mechanism of your own healing. Find a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be a fancy journal. A napkin or the back of an envelope will do. And for just 5 minutes, pour out whatever is heavy. Don't worry about the who, what, where, or why. Don't edit your grammar. Don't worry if you sound ungrateful or unspiritual. Don't hold back. Just release. Tell the paper what you are actually afraid of. Tell it what you are actually angry about. If you find yourself stuck, use this prompt. If my heart could speak without being afraid of judgment, it would say. Let the words flow until the pressure in your chest begins to ease. This is your Selah moment. In the Psalms, the word Selah appears over 70 times. Most scholars believe it was a musical direction to pause and calmly think about that. It was a moment for the listener to let the weight of the previous words sink in. When you finish writing, don't just close the book and rush off. Take your own Selah. Sit with the silence that you have just created. Notice that the world didn't end because you admitted you were struggling. Notice that you are still safe. If this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What is one thought you've been carrying for too long that you're ready to put on paper today? Just naming it in the comments can be the first step toward the effective labeling we talked about. Your journey toward a calm mind is a path worth walking, and you don't have to walk it alone. We are all learning how to pour out our hearts like water together. If you found peace in these words, please subscribe and join our community as we continue to explore the intersection of ancient wisdom and modern science. We are here to help you find the tools to quiet the noise and hear the still, small voice that leads to life. And if you know someone whose mind is currently a crowded room, someone who is drowning in the static of their own thoughts, please share this with them. Everyone deserves the chance to find their quiet. Everyone deserves to know that their mind can be a place of rest, not a place of torment. Would you like me to go deeper into how to use specific scripture journaling techniques to replace anxious thoughts with ancient truths? Or would you like to explore the neuroscience of how future self writing can help you overcome decision paralysis?